Hello, my name is Clark Miller, and I'm the director of the Center for Energy and Society at Arizona State University. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the first module, Defining the Social Value of Energy, within course one on the creating social value from energy in our, all right, start again. Hi, I'm Clark Miller from the Center for Energy and Society at Arizona State University. And I'm delighted to welcome you to Module 1. Hi, I'm Clark Miller, Director of the Center for Energy and Society at Arizona State University. Welcome to our training program on enhancing energy projects through social value creation. This is Module 1, in which we define the key idea in this training program, the social value of energy. Hi, I'm Clark Miller. I'm the Director of the Center for Energy and Society at Arizona State University. Welcome to our training program on enhancing energy projects through social value creation. In Module 1, Defining the Social Value of Energy, we'll learn about this key idea, the social value of energy, that is at the heart of this training program. And then in Module 2, you'll learn about the social benefits of energy and how to calculate them. And in Module 3, you'll learn about the costs, the risks, and the burdens of energy. So the basic definition of the social value of energy is the value that a user derives from using energy, right? You'll remember from the course introduction, shifting our lens from thinking about the technologies that create energy to thinking about the users, the people who use energy and how they use it and what they're able to do with that energy and how we can enable and empower that. So the key questions are: how much value does the user derive from their use of energy? What kinds of value does the user derive from their use of energy? And what's the net value, right? The value that we create minus the costs and the risks and the burdens that we impose on them through the design of an energy system. So you can think about this as a function that sits between, on the one hand, the energy system, which is delivering energy. It's providing energy as an input. And then out from this function comes value, right? Things that are important to people, whether that's economic activity, economic products that can be sold for an income, whether that's the ability to construct something, the ability to harvest and process food more effectively, right? Whatever it is that has value coming out that other end, right? This is what the social value function, if you will, does for you. And you kind of think about social work that's designed to increase the social value of energy, much like you would think about energy efficiency, right? So when we think about increasing energy efficiency, we're looking for ways to get the same value with less energy input, right? So you would get a more efficient refrigerator. Does the same thing that a refrigerator has always done. It cools your food, keeps it cold, right? But it does it more efficiently, meaning it does it with less energy, right? So here we're talking about exactly the same idea, except with increased social value creation, what we want to do is take the same energy and create more value from it. We want to get more from it, right? That's why it's the same as energy efficiency, because in effect, we're getting more value per unit energy input with energy efficiency. There are lots of other ways we're going to see that we can increase social value creation from energy by helping empower users to use energy more impactfully, right? So in energy efficiency, the idea is you change the machinery. You change the technology to make it more efficient. In social value creation, you change the use of energy. You change how people use energy, what they use energy to do, and in that way, you change the outcome of that energy use. All right, so also another key part of thinking about the social value of energy is it has to account for the net difference between the benefits of energy use and the costs and the burdens and risks that energy systems impose, right? So here again, we're differentiating this from a kind of basic energy efficiency type concept, because energy efficiency doesn't really account for costs in an efficiency calculation right here. So the whole idea with social value creation is not only can you increase the benefits of energy use, but you can also work to decrease or minimize the costs and the risks and the burdens that you impose on that person. And the net value creation is the difference between those two, right? So we can think about it a little bit like an equation. We get the economic benefits that we derive from energy use. We get the non-economic benefits that we derive from energy use, things like improved nutrition or improved education or improved healthcare, right? Non-economic benefits. Then we subtract the costs that are imposed, right? Through the energy, whether that's the cost of the energy itself or other costs that are entailed in using that energy to create the benefits that people are trying to achieve. And then you also subtract any additional risks or burdens that derive from the energy system and the use of energy from the energy system. Of course, we're not always thinking in a strictly quantitative or measured or calculative way, although the more you can do that, the better off you're ultimately going to be in terms of being able to demonstrate and show and really believe that the benefits outweigh the costs and the burdens, and so that your net value creation is positive here, right? And in course 2, we'll talk about, in course 3, we'll talk about another idea called the energy poverty nexus, and that's where we'll really differentiate between those cases where you have net positive social value creation, we call that generative, and net negative social value creation when the costs and the risks and the burdens are too high and they're higher than the benefits gained. And we call that extractive, and that can actually help keep people in poverty. And that's going to be an important concept down the road. But for the moment, all we're thinking about here is what is that net social value creation, and how can we make sure we account for all of the benefits, costs, and risks when we put that together. All right, so how can we take this idea of the social value of energy and use it to improve energy projects? Well, to start, we look at how individual users use energy, right? So let's think about lanterns, right? A very important source of mobile light for a household or an individual, or even for a community. And of course, out there in the world at the moment, there are 2 major sources of this mobile light. We call that an energy service, right? Because yes, of course, there's energy involved, but what really matters is what you can do with the energy, right? So here, that's the light that you're getting from these lanterns, right? So we can think about lanterns as a mobile form of energy, and then we can ask, what's the value that we're getting from those light applications, if you will? Right. So what is the social value? Let's think about the solar lanterns in particular. Well, lighting provides considerable social value, right? Think about education for children, the ability to do homework at night, in the evening, after work is done, right? And they can study. So this is a big one, right? We can think about business opportunities, the ability to maybe do your accounting after dark, the ability to do all kinds of other things, gather as a community after dark, right? So lots of things that light enables us to do in that part of the day when the sun's not shining, right? It's why we think lights are a particularly important form of social value creation. Of course, many people are buying solar lanterns, demonstrating, in fact, that they're willing to put their hard-earned, often very scarce money into this equipment to provide this light. So there's real tangible, meaningful value there in the lantern. But it doesn't explain why solar lanterns in particular are extremely popular just because they provide light, right? Because kerosene lanterns also provide light. But if you start to build a more complex picture of both the value that you're creating and the costs and the risks and the burdens, you begin to see why there's a fairly significant difference between the two, right? If you have a solar lantern, there's no cost for additional fuel, right? But if you have a kerosene lantern, you have to pay for that fuel, and that can be as high as $50, $70 a year to pay for that fuel, which is an added expense, which now makes it more expensive than the solar lantern, which might be more expensive up front, right? So the cost is actually higher, right? With a solar lantern, many people talk about the quality and intensity of the light being better than that with kerosene lanterns. You get no heat generated from a solar lantern. By contrast, you get a lot of heat with a kerosene lantern. And in parts of the world where heat is already a problem and you'd really like some cooling capability, that heat adds to discomfort. And it can even add to danger because, of course, kerosene lanterns carry with them a risk of fire if they come into contact with flammable materials, right? So you have a fire risk, which can be particularly important, for example, if you want to hand the lantern to a child to allow them to go outside and do something, or if you're handling animals where that risk of fire might be a real problem, right? And of course, burning of fuels in an indoor space creates air pollution that can then cause a health hazard, right? So there's a whole bunch of reasons why this solar lantern, even though it has some clear disadvantages, right? You have to charge it every day. It can only be used for a few hours before the battery runs out, right? So there are clear disadvantages that come with solar lanterns as well. But when you add up the net social value, what we're seeing in the world at the moment is evidence that solar lanterns have net positive social value in comparison to kerosene lanterns once you account for all the different dimensions of how that energy is used, the benefits that come from that use, and the costs and the risks and the burdens of that use. And in fact, people are finding all kinds of creative uses for solar energy that add tangible value to their lives, that make it an important focal point at the moment for social value creation in a lot of different places in the world, and especially in places that don't have high quality regular connections to the electricity grid. We can also think about community scale projects and think about creating social value at the community scale. And here you see a map of a whole bunch of solar and battery microgrids that are being built across the Indonesian islands, which have been a particularly challenging space for doing electrification because it's hard to build grids on islands, across islands, and have it run the way we traditionally run a grid from a centralized power plant. Whereas you can build smaller microgrids and bring that value of electrification to those communities. And to do that, we need to think about then the aggregate social value of energy that we're creating with that microgrid, right? So here you see the total energy access idea from Practical Action, an organization that does a lot of energy access work. And you see how they think about applications of energy in the home, applications of energy at work and in the business sector, and applications of energy in the community or public parts of the community, and that you can use energy in all of these spaces if you design for it, right? If you design an energy system that's capable of delivering energy for a diversity of different applications, not only in terms of the amount of energy that's available, but in terms of the timing and the physical locations where you're delivering different kinds of energy as services across homework and community. And we can even think about this idea of the social value of energy at a national level, right? So one of the most interesting kind of and often referred to diagrams is the relationship between human development on the vertical axis of this graph and energy use per capita on the x-axis or horizontal axis of this graph, right? And we often see this very conventional curve, which is very steep at the beginning, in which as you slowly increase the amount of energy used per capita, you get fairly rapid increases in our notions of human development. And this, by the way, is also true for economic growth. If you measure this in terms of GDP instead of in terms of HDI, you see a very similar kind of curve. And this curve measures, in effect, the ability of countries to convert energy into human development or into economic development, and how effective they are at that. And that is a measure of the social value of energy. How effective are they at converting the use of energy into beneficial value for the society that outweighs the cost of delivering that energy in the first instance. And we see that that goes up very rapidly in the early stages of energy system development. And then it saturates at the top of the graph, and you get situations where countries use more and more energy per capita to little additional benefit. And we can actually think about both parts of this curve in terms of the social value of energy, right? So if you think about this left-hand axis, where this is rising very rapidly at relatively low levels of energy use per capita, we often see actually that we get vertical lines when you start measuring this, not just a slope if you average everything out, right? But actual cases where countries are using the same amount of energy per capita and delivering a lot higher levels of human development with that energy. That means they're doing a better job of converting that energy to human development, right? They're delivering a lot more social value, if you will, for the energy, through the energy use that they're putting together. And the same is true across that top part of the curve, right? Where you start to, where it tails off really highly. And in those kinds of circumstances, right, you're seeing a similar phenomena in which a country like Iceland, that's way out on the right-hand edge of this curve, is delivering the same level of human development as a country like Japan that's much closer to the left-hand edge, right? But it's doing it with much, much more energy input. So in effect, you could say it's being much less efficient at converting energy into human development because it takes more energy to get the same level of human development. Or you could say their ability to create social value through energy use is lower than a country like Japan, right? So if you put these two ideas together, what you find is that as you go towards the upper left-hand corner of this graph, right, you are increasing the social value of energy. You are increasing at a net level for the country as a whole, the amount of value you're deriving, the human development or the GDP that you're creating, and you're using less energy per capita to accomplish that goal, right? And so you really, we're used to saying that countries travel this curve from bottom to top and they go out this right-hand edge. But in fact, what you really like to see are those countries that are able to push this curve towards that upper left-hand corner of the graph, where you're delivering as much value as you can, as much human development as you can, at the lowest levels of energy use per capita. That's high social value of energy. So this is module 1. has 3 sections. In the first one, we just kind of explore this idea of the social value of energy a little bit further. In the second one, we define it in detail. And in the third one, we look at some alternative expert approaches to thinking about the social value of energy. So welcome to the course. Welcome to Module 1, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Thank you very much.